Hi there. I'm going to do a review for The End of Oak Street. This movie just came out in theaters and it's directed by David Robert Mitchell and starring Anne Hathaway and a collection and well actually is it Ewan McGregor? And this movie was actually quite funky to watch. I'm not sure what to say about it because I don't want to spoil the big thing that happened in this movie. The trailer doesn't really give it away too much. It just shows a world where the neighborhood they live in um, gets overrun with dinosaurs. However, in the actual movie, there is an actual explanation for this, but I will not ruin that for you. I will let that seed in. All I know is that this movie is a little bit different than I thought it was going to be. It starts out very much. It starts out very innocently enough. It's a very straightforward movie. It's about the fact that this family. Um, I'm not sure entirely where this is based. Given the trees and the flora and the neighborhood, I would say not sure. Might even be Denver. Could be Colorado Springs. Could be Denver. Um, I don't know. It's not entirely clear. It could be Pittsburgh. Just by the hilly terrain alone, it doesn't look like it's Southern California because the trees look all wrong. The neighborhoods just don't look right for Southern California. Um, but yeah, it doesn't really matter where it's set. It's the fact that basically it's a movie where it's also set sometime in the past. Given the fact that a lot of their technology is obviously either late 70s era or early 80s. So this is like, it felt a little bit like a ET esque movie, or even what Stranger Things was trying to do, which was set in the early 80s itself. This movie here is set roughly the same time. I think, given what they show later in the film, I think it's roughly early 80s. I'll just say early 80s. It's really hard to tell because they do have some older cars from the early 70s in the movie, or even the late 60s, so it's not entirely clear what the year is because there's no specific car that gives it away what the dead year is. Some of those cars were actually from the late 70s. Nonetheless, it's set some time ago. But nonetheless, they find themselves in the middle of a world suddenly being overrun by weird. Well, first it's weird plants. Anne Hathaway, the neighbor finds out that she got a weird tree in the backyard, and she says to Anne Hathaway's Denise Platt, she says, "Do you recognize this thing?" And of course, it looks like an ancient plant. Of course, it is. It is an ancient plant. It's very, very ancient. The librarian that she consults on this issue says it's looking like it's from 200 million years ago. I'm not sure how the librarian actually knew that. Kind of confused by that, but whatever. It's amusing. Apparently, all the books she went through did not have the species, and I think that was because those books were based on species that existed or recently existed, not plant species that had existed, hundreds of millions of years ago. This movie though angles it in on the idea that these animals come out. Apparently, whatever happens, uh, dinosaurs now roam the neighborhood, and apparently it takes a little while for everybody to kind of zone in on the fact of what actually happened, because it happens kind of like late at night, just after 11. Apparently, basically what they realize is there's no electrical power, there's no running water. Um, there's nothing. There's Actually, I was kind of surprised by how long they lasted in the movie as it was, considering the fact they don't have any water. I was thinking, well, I'm not sure where they're grabbing water from. I'm assuming that the biggest problem with this movie is they don't have a lot of options because I'm not sure they had a lot of equipment for making fire in the movie, as it becomes clear of what the era that they've just entered into is, but it's definitely set a very long time ago. They do make some discoveries. I mean, obviously, the son is dealing with some bullies at school who become a problem through various points in the movie. Also, they meet the next door, I guess, a girl down the street, supposed to be like a black girl. They make a point of talking about it. Nonetheless, it's kind of an amusing movie. They got a bit of a jerk of a neighbor, although it's not entirely clear if he's actually a jerk or not. It's more the fact that there's definitely been some issues in the past with these things. So they don't exactly know if this is, if you can't really tell if this has actually been a real problem in the past. Although you just get the sensation that there's been some issues with the neighbor. But in this movie, he's kind of a concern because, of course, something took a giant poop in his backyard. And what ends up finding out is that they have a huge event happen. Light shines up in the sky, and eventually they figure out that there's dinosaurs starting to roam the neighborhood. It's not entirely clear exactly what species these all are. Actually, what I was surprised at is they did not have. Actually, I won't say that. I will not say what they did not have. Although maybe you already can figure out that just from just from what I said. There's the obvious dinosaur they probably would have had, but it wasn't there. Nonetheless, they do have some cute moments. This movie is really different. This I didn't expect the aspect of the movie that this movie showed. I didn't expect certain things to be in this movie that were in this movie. So yeah, I found it amusing. Uh, it's all good. It's all there. I don't know what to say about it because there's a little bit there where they are definitely trying to figure out what to do because the thing that happened in this movie was so sudden that they didn't really have any chance to prepare for it. This isn't like an end of the world scenario where you actually have a chance to run some water. Instead, apparently, I guess they must have been getting water from the basement apparently, but it's not entirely clear if they were grabbing any of that water out of the basement. I would say after a certain amount of time, you would just say, heck with it, drink that stuff regardless of what might be in that, but it was really hard to say because they definitely used up their milk. But that was the biggest problem with the movie is that they didn't have a lot of chance to get requisitioned with survival gear because almost everything they do hints at the fact that they really don't know what to do because there was no chance to prep for any of it. It's just the fact that the world has changed. Dinosaurs now roaming around their neighborhood. And apparently, gradually, everybody in the neighborhood is really unclear that anything bad has actually happened because they're just getting up and they're going off to work. And I guess they're assuming that everything must be good at the office because some of these people just get out of their houses and go and leave, but it's not entirely clear what they're going to do. Now, apparently, the televisions must not be working. The power is out. The water is gone. The family does board up the windows to deal with the dinosaurs a little bit better. But this movie does. I don't know. I definitely do not know what to say about this movie without ruining too much of the plot because it actually has a bunch of plot stuff going on here. I don't want to say it because that actually is a wrecker of a good chunkier narrative of the idea of what where the dinosaurs came from, how they suddenly ended up in this world. I guess just from the trailers you can kind of guess. But I think the problem with the trailer is they didn't give away that for a reason. They want you to know that this is kind of like part of the mystery of the movie is that how they ended up in the world with dinosaurs roaming around. I thought from the trailer this was going to be a standard narrative of somehow their neighborhood ended up in some sort of world where dinosaurs are just showing up out of nowhere. This has been done before, just not in this way. But yeah, the son and the daughter, and then they meet the black girl at one point. It's just funny because they also have a subplot involving their dog. Their dog disappeared for a bit. I don't know how the heck the dog even got out, but whatever, it got out. But yeah, they end up finding out there's like dinosaurs roaming around, and there's a variety of dinosaurs, but it's not entirely clear what species these things are because some of them. Actually, what I found amusing about this movie was that for all the love of the Jurassic World movies, this movie actually did a better job with the science than the Jurassic World movies have been doing because all the dinosaurs a good chunk of the dinosaurs have feathers on them. And even the Spinosaurus they have in this movie is actually it's actually fairly accurate to what Spinosaurus might have looked like. Now, I mean fairly accurate in the terms of what the movie's about. I don't mean fairly accurate in terms of actual accurate. I mean accurate in terms of how well the movie placed it. In fact, it shows a pair of Apatosauruses, a couple of Apatosauruses with fuzzy on them, which I don't think is very accurate, but nonetheless, the movie got some stuff actually quite accurate for what the movie is. It did actually a pretty good job in that narrative point. As for the rest of it, though, it was obvious that nobody knew this had happened. They all wake up, they all start going out, and they all realize that there's some problem in the world. They realize there's something wrong with their world. Because as the main characters find out, they drive around, they realize that all the roads are blocked. And again, I don't want to spell out why this all happened. It ends up being a very straightforward narrative in terms of what it was about. Not straightforward in terms of the science about it, but in terms of the fact that what actually happened made it very straightforward when it occurred. It's just hilarious because this family, unfortunately, I spent a good chunk of the movie thinking about one particular problem, is that if it's as warm as I think it is, now that they're in this world, how long are they lasting without any water, any serious water intake? They don't show them drinking much water in this movie. And I mean, yes, I know this is a pure fantasy narrative, but I would think that would be a bit more of a problem than they would present it as. But nonetheless, it doesn't really matter, because when you're dealing with a world where dinosaurs suddenly appear, and they appear for these particular reasons, it becomes so hilarious that they are having to get away from all these dinosaurs. And dealing with all these dinosaurs, and also dealing with other prehistoric animals. In fact, one of the prehistoric animals ends up producing one of the best sequences in the movie, because it's really unexpected how exactly they end up having to deal with it. In fact, they don't really have to deal with it for very long, because it turns out the son's good with a bow and an arrow. But nonetheless, it produces a really good sequence in the movie that's really actually quite thriller-ish, quite a bit of sensation there, because you really don't know what's going to happen until it literally starts to happen. You're not sure where this creature is going to go or who it's going to take first. Luckily, it didn't really take anybody, but nonetheless, it produces a real suspense moment on the level of the Velociraptors in Jurassic Park, and other suspenseful scenes. There was some very serious suspense scenes. There was also a scene involving a good thing, and actually one thing I love about this movie is how much firearms they have in this movie. They are not shying away from the fact that Americans have guns. They make that obvious that everybody has a rifle in this movie. They're not trying to pretend these people don't have rifles and weapons. They really show that off. In fact, that's one of the biggest plot points of the movie. It's just the fact that everybody has a gun in this movie. Whether or not the guns are all that useful against these animals, not so much, because the animals are big enough that the rounds that they're hitting them with are not that effective. Even the hammer isn't that effective, even despite the fact that it's like a 5 pound, like a 5 or 10 pound hammer. It's not as effective as it could be. Against a normal person, yes, it would be a dead end. But against the animal they dealt with, it didn't cause that much damage, apparently. It really didn't hurt it that badly. In reality, a hammer on a dinosaur wouldn't do much. A particular dinosaur he smacked it with, hammer that size would be like hitting it with a piece of wood. It wouldn't do very much. The dinosaurs have very thick skin, very scaly skin, in some cases a lot of feathers, so an impact from a hammer that size, even of that size, would have very minimal impact damage. Nonetheless, it did what it needed to do. It got him out of the situation, got him in, and another thing is, I like the amount of shock that was created by one scene in this movie. They really do react the way they should have been reacting. I actually enjoyed that part, because even though it was a horrible, horrible sequence, they still reacted the way I thought. Oh, she actually had a reaction. They all have this vivid reaction to an event, and they're like, I can't believe that just happened. But nonetheless, it happened. They're all stunned by it. They don't know what to do about it, but nonetheless, they have to move on. They have to they're in really wretched shape after this happens. But nonetheless, end of Oak Street. Very different kind of way to do a dinosaur movie. It was rather interesting. But yeah, it was good.